I will go ahead. Let's screw this on so I don't accidentally hit someone in the head. Bang it. Call the meeting to order. We'll start with a roll call. McKee here. Lanterman here. Fatima present. Baron Camp here. Nichols here. Perfect. Like to stand and join me in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda approval. Is there anything from staff? Looks like there's a couple, one or two things removed and a couple changes or amendments.
So, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council, item 6A was updated with resolutions. The title of item A was amended and should just read streetlight ordinance discussion. And then item 11A and 12 are removed.
Anything from council?
Are we gonna highlight the fact that this is Alicia's first council
Absolutely
meeting?
can. This is Alicia stepping in.
In charge?
Yep, this is Alicia's first meet.
I'll just go a little easy on it.
We will go easy on it.
Yeah, go easy on
We
you.
should each give
Go
her
easy
feedback
on
for
us.
that.
And on that note,
Jay lets a lot of things slide.
We'll do great. On that note, for minutes, Jay reminded me to remind everyone, including me, to when you're calling out your motions or seconds to say your name.
Names.
Yep, it's easier for minutes. And as you can see, we're catching up in some minutes.
Deb is here for, is this your first meeting too?
Second,
Second, okay.
Yeah, so that's our new city.
you were excused last week.
Oh yeah, I wasn't here, sorry. I hate missing meetings.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved. Nichols.
Second, bottom up.
Nichols and Bottom, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Open forum, and Alicia, if you want to walk us through.
So ladies and gentlemen, this is an opportunity where you can step forward and speak to the council about something not on the agenda. Council will receive your feedback and this will not be a dialogue at this time. Mr. Mayor, at this time, we have received one public comment card and I'd like to invite Craig Espeline of 19251 place to the podium.
Hi,
Hey,
Craig Espel in 19251 102nd Place. It's actually a question more for staff, but I know it's been asked by some of the folks in the neighborhood. In the city park that's going to go, or to be south of 102nd, we've been told there's going to be a pump station. We want to kind of understand where's it going to be placed? When is it going to be placed? Is there a picture that we can share? And if we can get a purpose of what's it going to be used for and why it's being put right there. That's one. And the second one is not on the list, but it can't access the agenda packet anymore. It's behind the firewall for tonight's meeting. I was able to access it earlier, but it's now behind the firewall.
Thanks for letting us know.
So that's it. Thank you.
Appreciate it. And staff reach out to you and sure can answer some of those questions better than I can. Perfect. Okay. On to, is there anyone else for open forum? No. Okay. On to consent agenda, which consists of items A through S. Would anyone like to pull anything?
Well, I don't necessarily want to pull anything, but I do have a question.
Okay.
I see a number of, meeting minutes on the consent agenda. I have May, June, July, August of 2023, and then it skips to April of 2024, and then it skips to June, July, and August of 2024. My question is, why the missing months?
Yep, Councilmember Lanterman. So these minutes are now on the agenda for approval because they were not done by the previous staff that were here. So we were just trying to get caught up.
Okay, so the
Yep, and then,
the missing months were taken care of by the previous.
correct, so that gap,
Okay,
those ones were taken care of, yes.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone want to pull anything?
I'd like to pull 6N or 5N, please.
Okay. Sounds good. I was thinking about the same.
I had a,
I'm sorry, 5N?
Yep. Anything else?
I had a question on 5O. If we don't pull and discuss,
Oh, okay.
what happens?
Um,
This was either direct staff to execute the letter of intent or
I
decline.
believe that's come up
Sheriff?
before where there's multiple options. I think the staff recommendation is what would happen.
To execute
Yeah.
that letter of interest. For the
So if you would like to pull discuss that.
I don't see a need to pull it. I think it makes sense.
I apologize if that wasn't clear.
No worries. All right, so I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items A through M and O through S.
So moved, Nichols.
Second, Barrington.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can I slide in? This isn't consent, but I want to talk about the opening to the Met Council Land Use Advisory Committee.
Yeah.
Can I just slide that somewhere in?
Yeah, how about we amend the agenda to add council report, mayor council reports, like right after staff reports? That work?
That works.
Perfect. I'll make a motion to amend the agenda to add mayor council reports as item 10 and then shift everything down after that, right after staff reports.
I'll second that, Nichols.
Motion McKee, second Nichols. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Out. Okay, and Dean, did you want to touch on that one?
Yeah, we've done this in the past. I want to keep doing it. I think Night Unite is an extremely successful event. Thank you to everyone that volunteered, everyone that donated. I can't thank everybody enough. Specifically,
This is the list of,
yeah, there's a huge list. Our staff, Jessica Christian Buck, Officer Anderson. I'm trying to make sure I don't miss any of those folks that
One more.
organized it. Got it. He's not with us anymore, right? He was a part-timer. Who else? Help me.
on staff, like a ton of people.
I mean, everybody
Yeah,
on
that's-
staff, everybody jumped in, but who am I thinking of?
JCB second in command.
Council, if I may, I am.
There
Oh,
she
there
is.
she is.
Well, I didn't see you sneak in.
I think you're thinking of Jackson Shipley.
Jackson, goodness
He was a
gracious.
Program coordinator, but in addition to that, it really does take a whole city. It's not something
It
that we
does.
can do alone. It takes every department, every hand on deck as they're available and can spare some time, right? But it creates for a really wonderful event. And we couldn't do it without sponsors and the help from council. So, thank you.
Huge deal. Do you have a number that may be attended? Out
The
of Public
citywide
Works?
party, 1,400 is the estimate at this time.
Okay,
And then it was
And we had a
20
record hard
registered
number of
neighborhood parties, which is
20
more than we've
registered,
ever
which
experienced.
was big,
And they were all pretty well attended.
was great.
Most of them were.
So I think it's something we've absolutely got to keep going, period. So
Yeah. And another group, in addition to the, I mean, they're kind of sponsors as well, but a lot of the civic groups, Lions, JCs.
Nighthawks, the track and field team.
Huge.
oh, she pulled it all up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hennepin County Sheriffs. I'm
There's
trying to
Tons of
remember.
people that raise
West
booths.
Metro came,
Mhm.
West Metro Fire, Hanover
Yep.
Fire.
We got ice cream.
So item 5N, if anyone wants to read it online in the packet to see who donated what.
Just
it's,
huge, guys.
JCB was kind enough to say she didn't want any of the credit.
Well, she's getting some.
I know.
Sorry.
I can't thank everybody enough.
Absolutely.
It's a big deal, and if y'all missed it, anybody online missed it, plan on next year,
First
Tuesday of
First
August.
Tuesday in August, yep. Why Tuesday? Nobody knows, but
One of the memorable points from my experience was a neighborhood party in Amberley where my kids and I got to enjoy homemade samosas alongside homemade bruschetta, plus a variety of cookies. So the neighborhood parties were also really good place.
I love the mix that we do of neighborhood and the citywide. It's a good combo.
If you were hungry, it was your own fault.
That's
So-
true. Perfect.
It's a good time. With that, approve their resolution. Make a motion.
Second, bottom up.
So, Camp makes the motion, bottom of seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, on to planning business, item 6A, which is, we'll have a public comment opportunity if anyone would like to speak on item 6A or 6B. Actually, I'm sorry, just 6A, because 6B is a public hearing. So you have an opportunity there for 6B specifically. If you'd like to come up for 6A, now's your chance. Otherwise, we'll go right into 6A's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a number of slides, particularly since the resolutions in the packet that originally got published were not correct. And so I do have everything clearly laid out in the presentation. If council would appreciate that, or if council would like me to do a consolidated version, I can do that too. Any thoughts on that?
I'd like to see the correct information.
Okay, sounds good. So for 6A, it's the applicant is Hope Community Development LLC. We are talking about the northwest corner of County Road 30 and County Road 116, surrounding the Hope Community Church site. We did, as a city, approve the preliminary PUD and plat in February 2024. And after working with staff to meet the initial requirements and the preliminary approvals and finding a builder for the villas and townhome component of the site, additional areas of flexibility were identified by staff and the applicant team. So specifically, we will talk about the buffer yard requirements near the villas and townhomes, setbacks, the landscape islands, landscaping calculations for the commercial area, as well as building permits prior to water availability. So this is more just to kind of split up all the words with a picture. This is the site we're talking about. North is to the right. And so if we need to come back to this as an exhibit, we certainly can. For the first flexibility area that we need to talk about tonight as part of the PUD amendment is the buffer yard. So the city adopted a buffer yard ordinance in 2023. And right now a buffer yard class D is required in the underlying zoning between commercial zoning districts and urban reserve districts. So the zoning ordinance treats the general mixed use GMU as a commercial district because there's that potential for commercial uses. And then there are urban reserve properties to the north and west, and a buffer yard is required. However, the general mixed use district actually does not contemplate villas and townhomes. It was actually more apartment buildings as well as a commercial district. So one of the questions for council is, since part of the PUD flexibility was to allow for a lower density product near that neighborhood, could we look at a different buffer yard along those areas? The proposal is a class B buffer yard to be applied to the perimeter adjacent to the villas. And that is consistent with how we treat single family homes that are adjacent to the urban reserve area. And then a class C buffer yard to be applied to the perimeter adjacent to the townhomes. Again, that's consistent with our mixed residential districts that include townhomes.
Can you show us where on the map you're talking?
Yes, so let me pull back. So again, the villas are right here. So it'd be a class B buffer yard along this line.
Okay.
And then the townhomes are right here in this corner. So it'd be a class C along this line.
Gotcha, thank you.
So in exchange, they have further reduced the density in this area. There used to be twin homes proposed. They have removed those twin homes. It is now 22 detached villas, and it's a higher end product than what was originally anticipated for this area. The lots are wider than they were originally anticipated to be, and a little bit bigger as a result as well. Additionally, instead of 51 townhomes, they are now proposing only 45. So there has been a reduction of about 10 units an acre. We're still on track to hit the density goal in the district overall, but the immediate areas adjacent to the existing neighborhood have been further reduced in density. Again, wanted to split up the presentation with some pictures. So here is an example of the townhomes that are being proposed. This is one of the elevations. There, as one of the conditions of approval, we do need to continue working through a couple of items, but that can be handled with the building permit review. And then this is another example of the townhome elevations being proposed.
What are those couple things?
So the staff report, it's more of, we need to confirm colors and making sure that we're gonna have to compare the townhome buildings adjacent to the building permit in front of us to confirm that there's a variety of colors. The elevations do meet the building material standards. I believe these elevations though are, these colored elevations don't show all the changes that they have made. We have some less prettier elevation or elevations in the packet that show the changes in materials that they've made to comply with the standards. So it's more of just confirming that we are getting windows on facades that need it. That is typical to happen with building permit review. And so that will be where those final details get addressed, but they will be held to those standards. So that was area 1. And then the next area is setback flexibility. Some additional flexibility is requested on specific villa lots that will be in a upcoming phase. We have villa lots 11, 12, 13 as indicated on the preliminary site plan for the overall development. And so Villa 11, it would be a 25-foot setback from the front. Villa 11 is requesting 23 feet. Villa 12 is also 23 feet with a rear setback of 23 feet. Again, both of those are 25 feet. And then Villa 13 is a 21-foot setback with a rear setback of 20 feet. The area there is just, they are a bit pinched with the road location, which is set, as well as the existing property line. So they do get a bit pinched in this area. And so trying to keep the products consistent, but they are still having a little bit of a footprint change as it is, to try to make those setbacks work, but they still need a little bit more flexibility there to make this pinch point developable. And then I will note that for Villa 13, that setback of 21 feet also means the driveway length would only be 21 feet, where we have a 22-foot requirement. So that is called out in the resolution. Additionally, this was a staff error that I completely own. I must have mismeasured one of the setbacks when we did our preliminary approvals. So for multifamily F, the parking lot adjacent to Oswald Farm Road has an 11-foot setback. I did go back and look at the preliminary plans, and that was shown at 11 feet in the preliminary plan. For some reason, I measured 15 my first attempt. So that is just correcting of an oversight on my part. And then guest parking spaces for the townhomes, they are right now, and I can go back a bit here. Right now, they are shown to go just a little bit within the 25-foot setback that we would technically require for a parking lot. And we have treated these as parking lots in other townhome developments. And so this is just allowing them to encroach as they're currently shown it no closer than what's on the current plan. So that we have those additional parking spaces, because staff believes it's better that we have that guest parking than it is to have that 25-foot setback. There is still a separation from the road. Also regarding setbacks, this is on the northwest corner of the townhome lots. One of the townhome buildings is a bit pinched with an area that the city has required to be dedicated as unimproved right-of-way to ensure access to the outlot that is landlocked right now immediately north. There is no intent, there's no plans at this time to move forward with the roadway. It would be if that outlot were to ever develop. It is possible that that outlot could develop with a few other lots in the area and get access to other means, but this would also still be valuable for utilities. Regardless, with this right of way, they have a pinch point where they only have a setback of 10.4 feet. Because it's right of way, it technically should meet the 25-foot front setback instead of a side setback. And so the applicant is requesting that we also include that as part of the PUD flexibilities. And in exchange, they are proposing a fence, and there will be that buffer yard for additional landscaping to separate it from the potential roadway. And then staff did also further note that a 20-foot buffer yard is technically required and supposed to be on the site with the townhomes. but with a 10.4 setback, 10.4 foot setback, they're not going to meet a 20-foot buffer right here. So we had with Woodland Hills, we approved, when we required that right of way, we approved them to plant the buffer yard as an interim measure on the unimproved right of way. So using that same same approach here, the compromise would be they need to plant as much of the buffer they can on the townhome site, but where they need to encroach into the right of way to get the 20-foot width so that the plantings aren't overcrowded, then the ideal would be to have that encroach a bit, no more than 9.6 feet. And then that would be handled as an encroachment agreement, encroachment and maintenance agreement for landscaping in the right of way.
If I can ask a question on that, that's 50 feet. Why is it designated that the one, how do I want to say this? How do we designate that hope this development has to do the entire 50 feet? Since it's on a property line, why isn't it split between the two properties? Why is it all coming out of this?
Because the property to the west is a single family home and is fairly unlikely to redevelop. So if this outlot were to go tomorrow, if they were to come in tomorrow to try to put a home on there, there would not be a road to access that if we only took half right of way now. But that would be, I mean, that is a consideration to keep in mind and why flexibility might make sense here, because typically we do try to take right of way between two properties, but I would say the difference here being there is an existing single family home with no intention to redevelop at this time.
Makes sense, but then again, what do we give this group for that right of way to grant a right of way to property to the north of them? Do you understand what I'm saying? If they need that access, shouldn't that property then pay for that right of way and that money goes back to Hope Church? Or we're just opening up, we want 50 feet, we're taking it, chop and chop. No option to change that whatsoever.
I think there's a couple things. I think there's a current access agreement that provides access to that property, so you don't want to change that condition.
I understand
There's a little
that.
bit of planning authority where you just can't orphan a property.
How big is that access? What is that access? Is it
That's our minimum right away.
full blown 50 feet?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just kind of consistent with the approach. It's a little bit of a one-off,
Okay.
unique situation, but the recommendation is to kind of follow policy.
Could you show the property map so we can see the adjacent parcels?
And Brian, if you wanted to comment.
And the other thing I'll say is the western property line here lines up with that parcel's western property. So usually in those cases, we don't split it.
Understood.
If it was a larger property that expanded to the west, that would be more of a consideration.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I just, if it's one of those things that we can define with a fence, can the fence go more into the right of way to make that yard more aligned, and then the fence comes down in the agreement when the right of way is needed, something like that?
So the fence, a condition of approval is that the fence be located on the townhome side, because if there is a road, we still want that fence there as a buffer.
Understand.
But as part of the encroachment and maintenance agreement, it would be anticipated that whoever is the assigned party entrusted with that
Okay.
agreement, they will take down any trees or anything that's in the unimproved right of way at their expense.
And then the distance from the fence to that corner of the property is 11.5 feet.
It's about 10 feet between the
Okay.
fence and that building. I would say that we're looking at probably a 28-foot road, so it's not like the roads that go
Understood.
up to that. There'll be a little bit more separation.
Okay, again, we do 7.5 foot side yards, depending on where garages are and stuff like that. This is more than that. I'm just asking questions, so.
So it would be clearly laid out to the people who buy
Yeah.
that piece of property that potentially if that property there gets developed, they might have a road
Mhm.
right next to that.
Yes, they will have to, would we have them sign that road as well?
I think that would be a
Yeah.
condition. We've done it like another where there's a disclosure they have to provide. on the building permit that they typically see and check off on when you purchase a home, I don't, that's part of the typical home buyer process, that's outside of the city process, but on the building permit, it would be identified as a right of way. We try to put this.
Understood. We've had those before, and there's a lot of people that have not read those disclosures, which is extremely disappointing.
He's trying to prevent people coming to
I understand
before
that.
council and saying, we didn't know they were gonna.
And we try to do that too, and you'll have somebody that says they didn't know that, but I think we do our best to try to disclose it, but if you want, I think we have added conditions in Bellwether, if you want to. I don't know if that's in the recommendation by our staff.
I know for sure 100th Avenue, there's a condition that 100th Avenue be signed to show that there will be a future road extension. We could also do that here too, so that there's a sign within that unimproved right of way that it could be a future road.
You guys have done a lot and stuff, but much of it has either been ignored or it's just not to the liking of the people that move in, and then it becomes an issue. So I'm being open and honest and transparent. Thank you for entertaining.
You're always open and honest and transparent.
Try to be.
So where would that right of way connect to if it was ever used?
This
Property,
property right
that
here,
chunk of
that's
property right
landlocked
there.
right now.
Okay.
And again, it's very possible that this doesn't redevelop anytime soon or develop anytime soon. And if potentially it's 20 years down the road and it's part of a bigger development project where access could come from here. That is a possibility. However, we have the ability right now to take right of way as part of the plat. We want to make sure that we're not orphaning a property. So that's why we're taking the potential for access to come from here at this point.
And then again, speaking from experience on my part, I lived with 24 property owners that owned 5-acre lots each. Developer came in, bought everybody out, and then removed, cleaned up, and then put in a 55 and older community. And I have no idea if this would ever change. These are all great neighbors, great families. They've got a great life and such. And just there's a lot that can happen. So, and that right away makes sense. 50 feet seems extremes, documents, covenants, however we want to write it so everybody understands there could be a road there someday. So
would it be a road or would it be a driveway?
It would, if we allowed a driveway, it'd be a driveway within right of way. We have permitting agreements. It really depends on what goes there. If this turns into multiple lots, again, that probably wouldn't happen next year. That'd probably be 10, 15 years down the road.
Yeah.
But if that were to be multiple homes, then it'd be a road. If it's a single home, then maybe it's a driveway. But the right of way is also necessary for utilities too, and that's also a standard utility corridor.
thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Do you have anything you wanted to add, Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor and Council. Just a little bit of historical context with this lot. Polk community actually owned this property, the one to the north. About 15 years ago, we sold it to Tom Lithgow. One of the conditions he asked of us if he purchased it was, could he have a driveway easement? So we granted him a 20-foot wide driveway easement to the property. That was always our intention. But obviously it has now become a 50-foot right of way. And so hence the request for some flexibility. That's a little bit more.
Okay, so then.
Thank you, Natalie,
Oh,
very
yeah.
much.
No, not a problem.
Kevin, thank you also.
Let me just find where I was. Okay, I think that is that. So then we get into the landscaping islands, primarily in the commercial parking area. We have provided some flexibility as part of the preliminary PUD to allow for some deviations in the spacing so that we can align these islands to, oh, let me get my laser pointer back, to align these islands to allow for some pedestrian pathways. Since it was such a large parking lot, I felt that strongly that that was necessary. And I believe Planning Commission and Council agreed with that as well. However, the size requirements for the planting of these landscaping islands are square footage based on the planting area, and it did not contemplate a pedestrian pathway within those islands. And so, and we're kind of running out of space to require the islands to be bigger to accommodate those pedestrian pathways. And I continue to feel strongly that I would prefer that we have these islands serve as a touchdown point for pedestrians trying to access these buildings. And I would, and have some less planting space in favor of 3.5 feet to 5 feet wide pathways. So there is language now in the PUD amendment resolution that would allow this. And it also clarifies that we would want at least 1 tree in each landscaping island. These landscaping islands that are 2 stalls long would need to have 2 trees as well as some ground cover. And that would help to not further reduce the parking spaces, which I would not recommend at this time because the 415 spaces required was based on the parking study submitted by the applicant and confirmed by our engineers as well. So that would be one of the requirements, and then.
And that's in the resolution as is right now.
Yeah, right now as is, that would allow for those pathways. And then when I also took a second look at our multifamily parking lots, it also looks like they were trying to have some pedestrian connections too within those landscaping islands. So we'd have, instead of having it just focused on commercial, the resolution language now allows that pedestrian pathways to be allowed as well for the multifamily. Yep.
Do we think trees would actually survive in that kind of a tight confined space?
Yes, we have, yep. As a landscape architect, you can attest to that. We also had our landscape architect and our city engineer also confirmed. Worst case scenario, you can plant trees within concrete. I don't know if Steve's here. Steve was talking to me about it, but that's not what we're proposing here. But there are strategies to do that if they were not to be viable planting spaces. But that was why some areas were 3.5 feet would be okay, so it can have a little bit more planting space, but then areas where we're trying to also meet ADA requirements, that's where it'd be 5 feet. So
Would they be irrigated, or how would you ensure that they?
I'll speak to it.
Thank you.
And Natalie, just real quick, that's what you're looking for and the applicant.
yes,
Okay,
yes, this is
cool.
us collaborating. Yes.
That's great, guys. It's huge.
So multifamily areas would also have the same flexibility. Additionally, I found a couple areas where, again, we're getting a little bit pinched in the commercial lots where like this drive-through lane and the areas for the dumpster, that we kind of start to lose the landscaping island. So as a problem-solving approach to a couple of these areas, I added language that areas where an end island cannot be fully accommodated, an equivalent landscaped area adjacent to the parking stall. So for example, here and around here, we can have that landscaping be provided. So again, we're getting the idea that we're not just having a whole bunch of pavement, we're still getting that landscaping, but also allowing for some deviation so that the site is functional. And again, each island must include at least 1 tree with shrubs and ground cover. Ground cover cannot be rocks. That is clarified in the resolution. And then rocks or gravel. And then end islands, the length of 2 parking stalls must include at least 2 trees.
Natalie,
Yes.
those islands count as impermeable surfaces, impervious surfaces by the watershed? Oh, okay.
I think they probably do. I don't know the exact details of a large development. I could tell you, I believe anything that sheds water does. But
Just curious, because if we say no to having them be landscaped, do they have to go back to the watershed and say these are no longer being landscaped?
You know what, I think it would just be an amendment to like this is like broadly looking, so that what the watershed recently reviewed was just the first edition. So if this multi-use or commercial or this would have to come back in through the watershed. So the watershed recently approved yesterday their first phase, which is just a villas and townhomes.
Okay.
So that's what they approved, so it's less of a concern. We would take whatever we approve and make sure it gets evaluated at a future time.
Yeah, okay. It just creates like a catch-22. They would have to redo everything. That just because I was on the watershed, if this counts, it's just something in my head about the calculus of impervious surface versus impervious surface. So, okay. So it hasn't been, this phase wouldn't have went to the watershed yet.
Correct. This would be.
There's some assumptions on, because the watershed looks at the whole site.
Yeah.
To some level, to make sure it works, and then the final details focus on. the
Yeah.
watershed.
So if we approve this, for example, and the watershed's approved phase 1 and 2, and then they go back and they said, and this, we make this hard surface, they might have to come back to us for a different approval if they have to take out things to create more.
They might just have to modify their design, but this hasn't been final design yet, so they would just have to account. for
I
that
hear
in the
you,
final
yeah,
design.
okay,
So my professional opinion would be to do what you want to do and they'll adjust to it.
fair enough, okay.
And then, again, with the commercial area, the preliminary approvals, one of the, had said that the underlying landscaping requirements would be based on the perimeter of each commercial lot. And that did lead to a large amount of trees, and we were running out of space to accommodate all of them. And truly, it is going to be, while there'll be property lines on all 4 lots, it is going to operate as a single site with the shared parking lot. And so the request is to apply the typical landscaping formula based on the perimeter of the commercial lots as a whole. And then that will still lead to a significant number of trees. We're talking about overall, the development's gonna plant over 1,000 trees, I believe, and over 800 shrubs. So we're still talking about a significant amount of plantings throughout the development. It's just making it a bit more of a workable number because there are arguably a lot of arbitrary ways the lines could be cut to try to minimize that. And so they would just prefer that we just take a look at the site as a whole for the landscaping requirement.
Mr. Mayor?
Mhm.
Natalie, just real quick, if you can go back to that.
Yeah.
Way in the upper right, in the parking lot of the church, it says proposed medical D again.
I
That
think that's just
probably
the
shouldn't be there.
label. Yeah, I think that was just a floating
Okay.
label, yeah.
Just Dot and I's crossing T's.
No, that's fair, but that is, we are not proposing a medical building at the church site.
Well, we aren't gonna do 2D.
Yeah.
Just, thanks.
But that's fair. So then the issue of the water availability, during the preliminary plat, the applicant did not believe a building permit would be desired prior to operation of the city's water system. The city's water system is now expected to be operational in January, best case scenario, but definitely Q1 of 2025. And now that JP Brooks has been identified as the builder for the villas and the townhomes, there is a desire to move forward with obtaining building permits for one model villa and 1 model townhome building, likely before water is operational. And the applicant team did successfully work with the city of Maple Grove and obtained approval for interim water services for those specific units. So the PUD amendment resolution clarifies building permits can be issued prior to the city's water system being operational with interim services approved by Maple Grove. If any additional units would be requested in the future through Maple Grove, then city would need to receive that approval. And then they will be responsible for the connection fees both to Corcoran and Maple Grove at the time of building permit, and those fees are non-refundable, and they do understand that.
Thank you, Maple Grove.
Yeah, that was surprising. So, and then finally, a request as we worked through the development contract came up regarding trunk line availability charges, specifically for the church site. And the applicant, it requests deferral of those TLAC charges, and their request was for 5 years or for until a final plat for the commercial or multifamily building comes in, whichever comes first. And so the city code does contemplate deferrals of TLAC. However, when this was reviewed by staff and the city attorney, it was believed that the deferral provisions were meant to assist properties that were determined to be part of an area approved for immediate utility service as the result of a city initiated project, not a property owner initiated plat. And this is suggested further by the language, assuming the city has taken out bonds to pay for the infrastructure. It specifically talks about how we would charge an interest rate 1% above the city's borrowing costs. And obviously, we have not taken out a bond for that at this time. So at this point, staff does not recommend deferral of the church site fees. Should city council choose to grant a deferral, staff recommends that we be very clear about the deferral period and what would trigger that. And we can certainly use the applicant's language. And then we also do not recommend the city bond or finance the TLAC. Instead, the TLAC should be subject to the fee schedule at the time it is due. And then that way we're not tracking interest in the interim.
I have a question on this one. So maybe I misunderstood how the system is intended to function. I thought that TLACs were applied at the time of final plat for the thing that is being final platted. So like if there's a new addition on Lennar development, they're paying the TLAC on that addition, but not the overall site. Is that correct?
Yes, but the church site is being subdivided in this final plat because the north end of the site will now be put into an outlot for future development. So that's why it's becoming due now. But that definitely is something to consider. It is an existing use. We are treating it as an existing use in terms of how we're charging the TLAC for the church site. But to be clear, it is being final platted at this time because of the subdivision on the north end of the site. And it's kind of like northeast.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
How much are we talking about?
Talking about $40,000, right around there. 45,000.
So again, this is the whole site altogether. It's different than the industrial park in the middle of town here where sewer and water was brought to it and people had time to defer those costs
Exactly.
for 2 years, and then there's some we've extended a third and a fourth year. So explain the differences to me.
That was a city initiated project and that area was determined for immediate availability of utilities. And so the deferral was to work with those property owners because it was outside of their control. The difference being here is this is a property owner initiated plat. The timing has been within their control. So yeah, that'd be the difference and that'd be the precedent you want to consider in terms of how we handle other plats that might come in where there might be an adjacent use that's part of that plat. But it's an existing use that technically is on septic and well, and so they might be kind of wanting to ask for that same deferral. I personally am not saying that we can't do it. We have it in the code.
No, I read it really thorough, and we can do that deferral and we can track it, we can trace it 1% above our borrowing costs, all of those things. I understand all of that.
But yeah, it's just the overall, we have to keep in mind that we do have a system coming online. Those TLAC charges are really critical right now. And so the staff recommendation overall was to not defer.
We're burying water and sewer down the road all the way to the water tower.
Just water to the water.
Water to the water tower, but nothing else beyond this first and second phase. There's no other sewers, so then why the charge up front?
So just one other nuance. So it's nicking the property, so it's benefiting. We're not charging the full acreage of that. It's usually based on the upland acreage of the full acreage, which I don't know what the size of that lot is, but it's more than one. We're just recommending the one unit. So we're not taking the full acreage of that lot. We're just taking the one unit for that existing structure. That's based on past practice, what we've done with other properties. So
and that's a charge, whether or not they hook up or not, that's their choice.
That's a separate, they'd have to get approval for that, and then they'd have to pay a different, that's a connection charge. This is just an area charge for availability. So when the property changes as part of a plat, that's when we look at taking an area charge. Instead of the full upland calculation, we just do one because it's more of a nick and there's an existing structure. So it's like a middle ground is how we've applied the process before. So what we're trying to get is, we want to revisit that, we'd be changing the precedent. And then in other scenarios, staff would then recommend to follow that new precedent.
Yeah.
So it just gets, it's a little nuanced and complicated, but the primary difference in staff's opinion is that they're asking for this change with their plat versus the city applying, that available, Natalie used the correct terminology, but instead of imposing it on somebody, there was that council wanted to provide some relief because they were not choosing to do that, it was kind of being imposed on.
Understood.
So that's the
Thanks.
major differentiation.
Can I,
Again, we can talk about that.
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
too? So let's pretend Lennar has or any builder has an 11 phase development, and their first phase is scheduled for October or whatever. Do they pay all of the hookup charges? Not for all 11 stages, just the one that we have approved at council at the time, right?
So the availability charges are based on the final platted lots in that final plat. So the availability charge is based on lots that will not be platted again in this first phase. That is all of what the calculations encounter. So we're not talking about the commercial area. We're not talking about the multifamily sites. We're not talking about the
Yeah, I
building
just
sites
want-
that will be in phase
Go
two.
back to Lennar.
Okay,
First edition. would be
First
calculated,
edition,
the
yeah.
other ones be deferred.
Okay,
yep. And
So,
then it comes in
Until
the
they
final-
come in
until the
for
final plat.
final for their second.
And then the connection fees happen at building permit.
so Lennar builds I don't know, 50 houses in their first phase.
Mhm.
And then, right at this stage in Lennar, they pay the TLAC charges for all of those houses. And that means all of those houses can connect to water right away when they're built.
So the TLAC is based on acreage, but yes, so all the houses in that first phase, we would take the acreage of the first phase,
Yeah,
and that's what the TLAC would be based on. And then, as they submit for building permit, they pay their connection fees and so then, yes, once the house is built, they have access to water and sewer.
So one part's collected at plat, one
Yeah.
part is collected at building permit, and then there's also pass through Maple Grove charges that are in our fee schedule are also collected at building permit.
so the TLAC charges are the houses actually even being. There's a separate charge when a house connects to the water, then there's this new charge that people get once they actually connect. So the TLAC is charged to the development. The option,
Final plat.
yeah. Is there any difference then with water accessibility or anything in this case? Is it the same as what we would charge other developers, or
It's
do
the
they get
same.
water, they could have water there and sewer or whatever?
We split them into northeast and southeast, so 2 different districts, but they pay the same fees as any other developer in the northeast district.
So it's based on acreage of potential development, not actual water use or connectivity?
Yes, because in theory, our trunk system is sized to handle what our land use provides. So the size and all that's factored into the system that we're building. Outlay. That cost to outlay that portion of it, then are spread over the users of that on an upland basis. And we want to collect them ahead of time. That's the staff recommendation, that's our policy, because if we have a significant investment, if for some reason something happened and we commit that land to be able to be used for that, and if there's a downturn and we collected it later, there would be some risk that we're tying up land. It's how we've treated every developer. We'd have to change policy. If we deviate from that, we'd have to, the recommendation would be just to treat everyone differently, but we
Or
do
same, or
yeah,
two,
yeah.
Differently than our treating.
We do have costs that we have to make sure that we appropriately account for, and this is the process.
So there's no difference.
They're being treated like everyone else, yeah. That's the truth.
But no difference in the water accessibility.
I mean, Maple Grove every community has it a little bit different, but we pass through Maple Grove. We collect TLAC at plat, and then we assess connection costs at building permits.
Is there any Maple Grove charge associated with this as well?
Not the TLAC, the connection fee. So if the church decides not to do, they would do a connection permit, is my understanding. So if they decide not to do a connection permit until city sewer is operational, then they would not have to pay the Maple Grove fee.
And those costs are outlined in the development.
Okay.
And then just to throw another fun caveat. So the lot 1, block 11, right here, has an existing single family home on the parcel, and someone is currently living there. We struggled with whether or not to plat that as an outlot and then create a non-conformity by having that single family home, or platting it as a lot to allow that to remain until they're ready to redevelop it as the multifamily site. We determined the best approach was to plat it as a lot. And then there is a condition of approval that it must be replatted. That is also a lot that will have at least a portion of the Three Rivers Trail corridor through there. So it'll just be best and cleanest to have that replatted once they're ready to develop. And then as such, the TLAC for that site is deferred with the current language in the resolution and the development contract until lot 1, block 11 is replatted for development.
Ask a question,
Yeah.
and I don't know if this is for Natalie or Kevin, but let's say you have a development turns into 10 different development contracts. And let's say there are conditions laid out in contract number 2. You continue with the development phase 3, phase 4, phase 5. If the subsequent contracts do not negate the conditions of contract number 2, are those conditions still expected? Are they still enforceable?
So we have this first contract is the master development contract, and that basically sets the stage for everything. And then, yes, unless there's some documentation within either a resolution and or future development contract that clearly states why we deviated from something stated in a previous version, the prevailing document would be that master agreement.
Okay, so just to be clear, you have a master agreement. There are conditions laid out in that original agreement. The development continues over time. Okay, and so you have subsequent development contracts. If those subsequent contracts or subsequent documentation does not, if they do not specifically negate conditions from that original contract, then it should be expected that those conditions are completed. Correct?
Yes, no, yeah, the master outlines everything, and so this one outlines some timing for when, like, offsite improvements of transportation, turn lanes, or, so the first one is like, you can't add any more than the first one.
Okay.
And then whatever like goes into each of the subsequent ones, they're like standalone contracts that are viewed separately, separate contracts, separate letter of credit, they're accepted separately. They all should tie back to the master unless there's a documented change, but it's standalone contract as part of the master.
Okay, so just to kind of clarify in my head, contract number 1 says we have to plant a tree. You continue with the development. No subsequent contracts say you don't have to plant a tree, because nothing addresses that tree. At the end of the development, it's expected that that tree is.
They should fall into one of the 10 if they're doing their job.
Okay.
Because it should, whatever, how many of those 10 it take should identify everything in the master.
Okay.
Either per the entire agreement or documented change.
Okay.
So it could take, so however many, it depends on when they come in, but they should all address that master agreement in some capacity.
Okay, so there should be documentation if something changes. And if there is no documentation, then it is expected. Okay, thank you.
And so now we can get into, that was basically all the PUD amendments flexibilities requested. And then we can move into the final PUD, final plat request. So assuming, this is all based under the assumption that those flexibilities move forward. The application in front of you tonight is to move forward with villas and townhomes to be built by J.P. Brooks. We are talking about 4 villas along Hunter's Ridge and then 45 townhomes within this area. If the PUD amendment is granted, the final PUD plan complies. There are approvals with conditions to clean everything up and get everything on a strong foot. So most notable is a wetland buffer establishment plan must be provided for approval by our city's wetland specialist. A revised preliminary site plan must be submitted, which clearly indicates all applicable setbacks. We're working with a lot of different setbacks, and I want it to be very clear what we're dealing with so that we don't have confusion later on. Then we also need to revise the development summary on the preliminary site plan, because it looks like there's some confusion in the amount of parking stalls required versus the amount of parking stalls proposed, and that just needs to get corrected. And then 2 more pedestrian pathways needed to be shown within the commercial area, within the landscaping islands, to meet the 6 pathways that we called out in our preliminary approvals. The revised final site plan, so again, when we talk about final site plan, we were just talking about this first phase. Revised final site plan must be submitted. The only thing on there really was that there was a note that said the guest parking stalls meet a minimum dimension of 9 feet by 18 feet unless otherwise indicated, and they do need to be that 9 feet by 18 feet. The one concession I made is that up to 2 stalls, if more than 9 stalls continue to be provided, up to 2 stalls may be marked for compact parking only, which would allow for a smaller width of 8 feet. And that could be a sub concession we make there. Again, overall, the goal is to provide parking. And then if the PUD amendment is granted, I don't need to keep reading that part. Additionally, a revised final site plan should show landscaping of at least 3 feet for parking areas with 4 or more stalls to screen vehicle headlights from adjacent residential lots and streets. We need a preliminary landscaping plan. Again, when I say preliminary, we're talking about the site overall. And that is needed to confirm that at least half of the plantings must be a Northeast District identified native species. That's one of their resiliency strategies. At least 867 shrubs must be shown, and a decorative fence there is a decorative fence on multifamily F, but it needs to be extended to run parallel to the parking area adjacent to the sidewalk along 100th Avenue. And then a revised final landscaping plan that's specific to phase 1, again, needs to show screening for parking areas with 4 or more stalls. I believe there's 1 that actually is 4 or more stalls that we would need just a little bit of shrubbery right there. And then needs to be updated to show that 20-foot buffer along the west side of the townhomes with that encroachment into unimproved right of way. So this is the landscaping plan for that first phase. So right now that buffer yard is squished in right here, and we just wanted to get that even 20 feet to make sure that those plantings do survive. We've been told that the planting within our buffer yard there's a lot of planting already required, and to squish it down further is a concern that these really will not be viable without providing a little bit of flexibility there. And then the 4 parking lot, the 4 stalls right here, we just need some shrubbery at about 3 feet to shield headlights from Hunter's Ridge.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yep.
And I don't want to derail. Go back to that picture.
Mm-hmm.
When this first came to us, wasn't the conversation on the west side of Hunter's Ridge that was going to be an open space deal, or this how this has always been there? Is that a bad dream I had, or?
That was when it came in as concept. That was not what was approved with preliminary. The tot lot that was shown there is still shown on around the church area. On the church
No,
site.
and again, I would rather see this than a tot lot, because anybody walking across that street, it's a safety concern. So I didn't dream it. Thank you very much.
What's the density of phase 1?
It was about a little over 8 units.
18.7.
I think that's the set overall. Phase 1 I'm saying is 8
With the
units.
changes, yeah.
8 units an acre.
Right.
And then Density exhibits, the applicant did submit some density exhibits. They weren't quite what I was looking for. And so there's just a condition of approval that before we release building permits, to continue to work with me so that I have accurate exhibits for plant monitoring reporting. And then final elevations, again, will be revised and approved with building permits. There's no additional flexibility requested. They will be expected to meet that, and that'll be something that's confirmed by myself as well as our construction services specialist when those building permits come in. And then if the PUD amendment and final PUD plan is approved, then the final plat complies with just a couple approvals of condition. One, this final plat must comply with the city's street naming policy. The final plat still shows Hope Way for that main street into the development. And our street naming policy has that as 100th Avenue. If council wants to remove that condition, then we can certainly have that debate. And then previously established DNU easements and right of way.
Steve's trying to hitchhike up here.
She just tried to slide over that.
I'm almost done with my presentation.
Oh, I'll be quiet. We'll talk Hope Way afterwards. Thank you.
Previously established drainage and utility easements and right of way that will now be in conflict with what's currently shown in that area must be vacated in favor again of the newly established easements and right of way. The right of way that would be vacated for Hunter's Ridge and Oswald Farm, where there is an existing roadway, until that is corrected with the improvements that will come with this development, we would have a roadway easement that we can later remove further. The benefit of doing the vacation now is there are lot lines that are technically within right of way. So we do have to remove that right of way to move forward. So the recommendation at this time is to approve the 3 resolutions that were updated. 91 approves the PUD amendment. 92 is the final PUD plan. That's probably the thick of any changes you want to make. But the PUD amendment is the new flexibilities we discussed tonight. And then 2024-93 is approving the final plat and development contract. As part of the final plat resolution, the city is officially commencing the right-of-way vacation. Because it's right-of-way, we have to take that extra step. And it would be for along Hunter's Ridge and Oswald Farm in favor of the new right-of-way to allow for a 90-degree intersection improvement. And that is that.
Dean, did you want to start us off with the Hope Way?
I want to resolve that issue.
Okay.
And I completely know and understand the reasoning to go to 100th Avenue. Obviously with my daughter being on dispatch for 911, Hennepin County, all that stuff, we'd love to go to numbers instead of all these other words and stuff. If we can't go to Hope Way, I have a proposal to change it. Hope Way at 101st Avenue. Is there a way we can do that type of nomenclature to include Hope Way in the name of the road and it's still 100 and?
So you're talking about like when we have street names that have 2 names?
I'm not saying 2 names, at 101st. Is it 101st or 100th Avenue?
100.
I just, we, and I know what came out of the ordinance change and everything else. In Ravinia, that is crazy trying to remember where all those roads are and stuff, but it fits that neighborhood.
What about 100th Hope Avenue?
Almost sounds like an address.
I know, I suppose that's.
I'm just saying, is there a way it can be added into, I understand the 100th, I understand that identifier for public safety, for everything that goes on, but we talk about our heritage, we talk about our rural heritage, we talk about very important people that have done things in our city, our founding farmers. You know, we've got Streeler, we got Stieg Road, we've got all of these things. Ebert Drive or whatever it's called, Meister, we get so many of them. And I believe that this is something that needs to be recognized for this group of people. I don't want to say investors, anything, this group of people that have a vision that started somewhere in the late 90s of 1900 98, 99, whatever. Anybody remembers that time? Probably some of you are probably weren't even born. This is something that I believe deserves that identifier. We're gonna keep Oswald Farm Road, right?
Yes, the south of Hope or 100th would be Oswald.
We're gonna keep Hunter's Ridge.
Correct.
H is Hope Way is right there by Hunter's Ridge. Again, I understand the public safety.
Do we have
side
the
and stuff.
authority to do it?
It's a street naming policy, so yes, the council can tell us to deviate, staff does not, so that's why staff is gonna continue
So
to rely upon.
We could make a motion that we,
Yeah, you could make a motion to remove the condition
It's
that
as
they
easy as
revise the
that.
plat, but I would like to, I do need a street name because so is it Hope Way, is it Hope Avenue, is it Hope 100th Avenue?
What was proposed? Hope Way?
Are we
Yeah, I'd
open
say
to
no.
New Hope Way?
no.
No.
I think with modern GPS
Yeah,
I work on an ambulance.
Yeah,
figure it out.
It's not like they graph everything out to find it. It's not
there's
a
been
public
times,
safety.
there've been times I've plugged in a street number and it
Especially if
doesn't even put me
99.
close to the street that I was going to.
I don't think any of the
So,
five of
yeah.
us would disagree with keeping it at Hope Way.
I'm fine with it.
Do you? We could vote on it. I'll make
Discussion,
a motion that we have it be Hope Way.
So amended to be.
So it'd be a
Hope Way.
motion to amend the
Second.
final plat
Yeah.
resolution.
Yes.
Okay.
Without actually,
So we have a motion, a bottom, second.
Second,
from
Derek,
Mary
yeah.
Camp to make that amendment.
Okay.
All those, or any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Okay,
There we got one done.
that one
How
done.
about that?
Boom.
we got the easy.
Thank you
the easy
all
one.
for your patience tonight. This is a big deal. And we all are going to have our names on this, prior developments, those kind of things. It's been a different group. This is our first one and I want some type of ownership, even though I'm not part of the investment group or the development. This is a cool thing. And over time, it's going to be a huge addition to our city. So.
I'm gonna put on my resident hat for a minute. For Woodland Hills, we added something to the development contract to require that before certificate of occupancy is issued, landscaping for that lot had to be installed. And that was to counteract some of the tendencies that we've seen amongst developers to delay installation for unreasonable periods of time. I'd like to propose that for at least the single family portions here, we consider something similar.
It is in there now. It's not part of our verbiage. I will add that we can't hold certificate of occupancies due to landscaping. I am working with our construction services specialist about figuring out a certificate of occupancy escrow that we could hold to ensure landscaping is. So there's a process we're planning to come back to in hopefully October to outline that with staff. I'm sorry, outline that for you.
Okay.
But
Good job.
just to clarify that is in there, we're gonna have to still figure out what that process looks like, but that is intended, yes.
Is it fair to say that the enforcement mechanism is something you get frustrated with? Because
Yes.
it's already in the code?
Good work. Good
Okay.
job bringing it up here.
So going back to the other discussion issues, like the buffer yard items and setback. Does anyone have any concerns they want to start with there or talk about there? Or are we all good? What was proposed by staff?
I don't.
I think I'm good.
Do we have to make a?
Don't have to make a motion on this.
Okay.
I'm just going
You're
through
just going
a
through each
few
one.
items that I made notes of that are decision points we need to make. So nothing,
No.
Jeremy, are you looking?
I'm just double-checking my notes.
Gotcha.
On the presentation, none of the staff proposals was particularly alarming to me. I would be happy with
Same
what
with
was presented.
the guest parking item.
Yeah.
Into the setback a little bit.
On the, if we're going to allow deferral,
On the
there was
Yeah,
a
that's the
question
big one.
about what is the right rate for that. I would suggest that we consider the large bond we issued for creating the water system as the benchmark, because that's really what is driving this to be possible. I don't remember what that rate was, but adding 1% onto that would seem to be the right value if we decide that we're going to change current practice. But from the tenor of the conversation, it sounded like there wasn't really support
Mhm.
to modify existing precedent.
Yeah, well, I'll open that up to you guys. I think, I agree with staff of that. It does raise some concerns to me about changing precedent overall with.
Well, I understand better and it is a one unit deal and such. I would have rather have put it off and whatever, but I'm guessing it probably isn't a deal maker and I don't want to open the can of worms
Gotcha.
for other developers and such.
Mhm.
I'd love to be able to fulfill a request, but I think it's less of a hassle now than going down the road.
Yeah, and I feel differently if it was like a $5 million charge or something, where it's huge compared to what's being platted.
Not that $40,000.
It's not a pittance, certainly, but
Jeremy
it's
spends
not
on
ruinous
lunch every
either.
day.
Is it?
Me and my golden sandwich. Yeah.
Do you have any?
Yeah, I wish that there, or I guess, there doesn't seem to be, unless I'm missing something, a unique situation that arises with this compared to the other developers.
Yeah, to set it apart.
Yeah, if there was something, like, I don't like to make up new policy without some extenuating circumstance.
I'm gonna,
And I'm open to hearing about those, but I haven't heard anything, but we do have precedents of being able to charge interest on the TLAC charges, which.
if I can say something real quick,
Sure, Dean, and then
and
Mark.
I apologize.
Or Mark.
I go back to the tower was supposed to be in that open park in Bellwether.
Arguably.
And we've done this with the cooperation from this landowner, this developer and such. That's worth something. We spent money that we didn't need to spend to buy that land for that water tower. We had that all in the Bellwether plan and such. Again, could have been charged a lot more than what was there. Not saying it's right, but they've done things to be a good neighbor to us and to help us and stuff. Just saying, there's been some things and such, and again, 40 grand, probably not a deal breaker, but I still think there's something there for us to say. I don't want to say thank you. I don't want to say favor. I don't want to say any of those things. I
Can't say
just,
those things.
yeah, I said it because I am the way I am, but I just, is there something there? I'm asking the council. So thank you.
Mark, did you have?
No, I don't have any concerns and I want to be mindful of everyone's time.
First of all, we would not ever want to be treated with any preferential treatment that anybody else in our situation would be treated. So we would never be asking for that. From our perspective, we weren't able to hook up to either the sewer or the water with this first phase. So we were just hoping to defer that to the second or third phase, which would be maybe the senior residents and so forth. But also listening to what Kevin and Natalie have expressed tonight, it seems like the mechanisms really aren't there to allow that deferment for us without treating us in a preferential way. And I would say that one of the most important things to us has already been decided tonight, and that's the name of Hope Way. So I feel like that was a give to us from this council, and we deeply appreciate it. And we are fine with, absorbing that TLAC charge.
Okay.
Is it, can they not hook up the first phase to water?
Let's not hook up.
It just makes more sense due to the proximity of the structure on the lot. It's a fairly large lot that the church sits on, so if they could, waiting allows them to do it more efficiently. So again, the area charge is different than the connection charge. So
Yeah.
they seem like they blend together, but the way we structure it, they're separate. It's it's the availability to change the planning a lot that triggers it, so. It may feel like a nuance in our world in terms of how we try to apply it equitably, it's pretty clear. Appreciate the conversation, but they're two separate things, connection and charge, the way we structure it.
Mr. Mayor, thanks
Yes.
for letting me
Of
add
course.
those comments and, thank you.
Natalie, is there anything else big topic wise that we missed?
No, I because I made the error to begin with the resolutions, if everything is to the council's liking, I'm pretty confident what we have in front of us is ready to go.
Okay, then if that's the case.
Can we make,
I'll make a motion to
Go.
approve resolutions 2024 91, 92, and 93.
second?
Second.
I'm gonna give that to some motion to.
You can give it to
Nichols.
Lanterman.
Give it to Lanterman, okay. He dropped it, so I'll give it to the second to Lanterman.
I won something.
You did something.
Any-
You didn't win anything, man.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0.
Mr.
Thank you very
Mayor,
much, yeah.
you wanted to say something.
I did, actually.
We just stepped on it.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't say something that's
Yeah.
gonna make us change our mind.
Well, best part is you already voted. But
Yes,
I do wanna,
sometimes less is more.
that's right. So what I do wanna say, and I think it would be remiss as a development team to not thank city staff. They have spent a tremendous amount of time and energy working with us and truly collaborating with us. So I just wanna thank Natalie and Kevin for really kind of helping us through this process. This is not an easy project, as you can imagine, with all of the moving pieces. And so, Natalie keeping us straight with the code and understanding where we're at, Kevin working with us with a very dynamic environment right now on the site with all of the.
You got some
utilities
big
going on.
holes on there right now.
It's been a challenge. We can see the finish line at least, and so we really appreciate it. I just would be remiss if we didn't take some time to at least say thank you. So, thank you.
Thank you for saying that. And I was gonna mention as well, Natalie, great job. I know you put a ton of work into this and some long nights and some stressful days, and you did a great job, so.
This is only the first phase.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
Well, this should be hopefully the hardest one. So, now that we've cleaned everything up with the PUD amendment, I'm hopeful everything will go smoothly from here.
we're still talking more about Hope Meadows and everything, aren't we?
We have a couple more items.
Yeah. a
to
couple
go.
more items.
I was like,
Yes,
Okay, we'll go on to 9B, which we have a public hearing for, so I will go ahead and open the public hearing.
would you prefer a staff presentation?
Yeah, you're right. We should do that first. Let's do that first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, this is easement vacation. This is not the right of way vacation that is scheduled for 9/26. So this is just for some drainage and utility easements. And
Can I make a motion?
We have to do a public hearing.
Yeah, I think that's a
Oh, do we have
public
to do-
hearing.
And we're
Do a
doing,
public hearing
doing-
before the presentation?
It's 2 slides. A lot of people that might be here for the drainage and utility easement, they don't
Fair enough.
necessarily know what that means. So again, this is for the previous site that we were just discussing, and it's for previously established drainage and utility easement. So we're talking about right along here, where these will now be replaced with new drainage and utility easements, or be replaced by new right of way within the plat. So utilities in that area will still be covered through easements. It's just kind of rearranging things because of this intersection is going to be improved. And so staff recommends approval of resolution 97, approving the DNU easement vacation for Hope Meadows.
Great. Any questions? No, I will open the public hearing. We're good. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
so
I'll make
moved,
that
Barry
motion.
Camp.
Motion Lanterman,
Second,
second Camp. All those
I'll
in
make-
favor, say,
I
say aye.
Aye.
John, do you want to make a motion on the item?
wanted to make a motion on 6B, and it's not unusual that I would make a motion before hearing a presentation, because we have the packet and we read it. I'll make a motion that we approve item 6B.
Second, Barry Camp.
Second.
I'm gonna give that one to Camp because Mark got one earlier, so Bottom Camp, and that's just to clarify, to approve resolution 2024-97. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you very much. We are done with those items. Oh, wait, there's one more helper. On to, what do we got here? Is it the business? Yes, we have a public comment opportunity for items 8A and 8B, if anyone would like to speak. I think we're good.
Did we, 8B isn't it crossed off on a revised?
Was it? I was looking at my
It
own.
was just
No, it's just the
renamed.
first one.
Rename the
Oh,
street
okay.
lighting policy.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Perfect. So we'll go into 8A if.
So we do need to close public commentary. Public comment? We need to close.
Did I not do that?
No,
Not yet.
I'll make a motion, we close.
I
public
did.
comment.
I'll second it. Any further discussion?
I think we only need motions to close public hearings, not public comment.
Oh, yeah. I thought they were talking about the previous one.
We did.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve 8A early grading. It's very common that we start grading before the winter season.
Do we have a second?
Second,
Nichols.
Any further discussion?
he did it.
Staff doesn't have any concerns with us?
Nope, it's a straightforward one. They got watershed approval, there's a couple tweaks. It's a standard agreement, so there's no exceptions to this.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you, guys.
If I can say one thing, JP Brooks, we'll do our best. Great to have you in this community.
We have street lighting conversations to come. If you may want to stick around for that.
Could be,
Make sure we install.
could be thrilling.
Make sure you install.
And we have a street darkening policy.
Yeah,
I got one at my house. It's called when the sun goes down, it's dark.
light switch for your yard light. That's what I got.
We'll go on to 8B, which is the streetlight ordinance discussion. Kevin?
I think who's ever running the screen, there may be a presentation in the file. If not, we can roll with it. It's really just that exhibit that shows the Ravinia examples. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is a discussion really related to a potential streetlight ordinance update. As the city continues to grow, we have more and more streetlights, and our existing model really just absorbs that, any of those costs into the general fund. So that's essentially spread through the community and or paid for by escrow, by developer escrow. So most of the streetlights you still see in the new neighborhoods in the MUSA are still being paid for via the developer escrow. We anticipate that coming off in mass quantities soon. That's the reason of bringing this forward, so we at least have the opportunity to continue the discussion. How do we want to change any of that billing or charging of those expenses? The background's in the report. If there's any questions, we can dig into it, but really what we're looking for tonight is some sort of direction and approach to how we want to break out billing, if we do want to break out billing any differently, as well as some ordinance changes or recommendations on how to implement those potential ordinance changes related to said billing. We provided some recommendation at staff level that breaks it into like 5 categories on how we basically see electrical charges with the city. That's outlined in the report. What I want to start with focusing on is, what potential costs might be if we separate them out and how we go separate them out. So before you and in the report was the Ravinia neighborhood is one of our first neighborhoods. I believe it's almost fully built out, if not at 99.9%. And so we just really looked at that model, some costs that we're seeing today in 2024. There's a footnote, we did not apply any admin fees to this or any utility rate increases. So it's just a snapshot of what we're seeing today. And the recommendation that staff is having in order to simplify our processes and in order to kind of create a differentiation between what's a lateral streetlight and what's maybe a broader trunk streetlight, kind of borrowing the infrastructure terms we use in our other enterprise funds. We have in red here Gleason Parkway. So that would identify the streetlights on Gleason Parkway. That's a trunk collector road. We're recommending that the trunk collector roads in above and all other miscellaneous are still housed in the general fund. And then any of the yellow lights or more of the neighborhood lights would fall into more of a user fund that would be potentially applied to the users in the MUSA who receive utility bills. And the differentiator is there's trunk and trail alignments, or there's trail and road alignments through the trunk system. That's more of a larger use, intended to be a larger use. There's no residential driveways on that. We thought that was a good differentiator as we start to lay that out. And again, in terms of housekeeping, in terms of administration of if we were to go this way, that would be a clean, a clean line, delineation line for how we track this data, this inventory that we're getting. And you can see some of the projections on cost, what we might see as a user. So, but if we went with the yellow lights being charged to the users, it'd be, $2.50, maybe upwards of $3 a month. If there's increases in utilities, a small administration fee applied. Maybe I'll pause there and field questions.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? Yes, please. So we have this debate in our town, this is a new one, but we also have the debate on the dirt roads and assessing them for dust control. And I will never have a street light at my house, ever. But these streets will also not have dust control. I would like to, so in my mind, I'm like, I ain't paying for those street lamps. They're not in my neighborhood. And they probably in the mind of people who live here, they don't need dust control. I would like to tie, since they're both streets and they have different needs. What I would like to do is tie them together. And so long as the city pays for dust control, the city pays for the main trunk lights. And if they ever break that up, then both of them have to be revisited. We have lots of different streets with different needs. 80% of our town is rural, 20 is urban. I wouldn't mind tying them together
with dust control, kind of.
The maintenance of the roads, including dust control, maintenance of the lights. Just so there's this notion of that we have different street needs and we're all in it together.
Yeah,
I agree with that perspective. I think,
go ahead.
I think it makes sense for it to be spread across the city. I had a clarification question. So the yellow row that has 308 in it, is that per housing unit in that development? Where does the 308 come from?
I think that's just an indication of how, that was just a label from our GIS system. Those numbers don't mean anything. We just tried to express the number of streetlights.
No, just,
Okay, sorry. So on this map in the Ravinia neighborhood, there's 82 streetlights in total between yellow and red. And then you times that by $16.40 is the average cost we're seeing per light in 2024 with just today flat electrical costs. And then so you multiply those two and divide it by 437 residences. That's how you get to 308. So and we think this scales up because our policy is very, we follow the same policy from Ravinia to Bass Lake to MI to Pulte. It's the same layout, spacing strategy, and then due to our wetlands and our layouts, a lot of these neighborhoods end up being very similar. So we're not guaranteeing that that's the rate. We would evaluate it further if we wanted to spend the time and energy to separate this out. If the council wants to just roll it into the general, that's our current policy today, so it's just no action. That's easy, but we had a previous conversation a year ago, last fall, when we thought we'd be absorbing more, and there was some interest in potentially considering this methodology. So if we go down the route where we do separate it out, this is the delineation staff would recommend. So if the council supports spreading it similarly to the dust control, where it's spread across the whole city, then there's no action.
But I want them officially tied.
Yeah, I'd like a way to recognize that and then have, keep this work in hand, that in case we ever decided or a future council ever decided to change how we're doing dust control back to how we used to do it, that then we could have this work to go back to say, okay, well, then this is
Like,
how we're
yeah.
gonna change lights.
We
Sounds
have to
like a
change it.
paragraph in a street maintenance policy or
Something like that.
So maybe.
So if we ever
ask staff
say,
to bring back some way to tie
I'd
that.
have to check with the attorney,
Yeah.
you know, if we could tie those together, other than it could be through a policy.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's probably an easy way to go, but I'd have to, you know, I could verify options and we could bring that back if that's direction given to us. The most important one is if we did want to change in the billing model, we would need to gear up for that and implement and, you know, convert that by year end. If we don't, it doesn't sound like we're going there, then I think it's, the pressure's off and we can just have that conversation and follow up per your direction.
I would rather see us focus our energy on, well, energy pun, sorry. Focus our energy on reducing the overall cost of the system. And I've mentioned before, it appears there could be some cost advantages to going with the solar model versus Hennepin's preferred model of giving us streetlights for free and then charging us 20 bucks a month for life to maintain it. And I feel like that's worth some investigation on staff's part to determine if that's something that, as we build out more and more of the city, these costs will escalate at a linear or maybe higher than linear rate.
So what
If we
you're
can cut
saying
that off.
is we buy the light,
Not
make
necessarily.
it solar.
Is there a
and
way
go from
to,
there.
is there a way to build it into the PUD process? Or have ordinance requirements around?
Where the developer buys the lighting.
Right.
Just to clarify how it happens now, just Hennepin and Excel provide two options for streetlights.
Right.
Total one
And
each.
one is like more of a sidewalk light and one's more of an intersection light. So both, they're each of them, and they're fairly similar looking. That's all we get, that's all the options are, unless we wanted to purchase them ourselves, which is what we did for City Center. So
And that
Do
cost, do
we
you
have to-
remember what that cost
A lot.
was when we bought them?
So if there's no cost other than electricity for the ones, we can choose what style, carriage or overhead. And we can tell them where to put them, but we just pay electricity. They replace the bulbs, they repair it if there's damage, they stock the supplies. That's all on the providers, and it's similar for Excel and Hennepin.
This cost too, the 1640 per light is, I have LED yard light and it's about $27 on an LED yard light in my property a month. So, I mean, these are all LED, everything is this and that's the cost of a light.
There might be some early ones in Ravinia that weren't, but I think that when they burn out, they switch to that now.
Okay.
But then getting back to, if we were to change that, at least if we didn't go and try to negotiate with the providers, which would probably be a long haul effort, and you guys could give that direction, but assuming operating under today's model, like the city center lights, we wanted something different, so we had to pay for that. We have to stock those lights. If the lights are out, we have to replace them or hire someone to replace them. So we basically, we're purchasing, we're maintaining, and we're paying for the electricity. So that's the distinction. So if we can't get the providers to pivot and do something different, we're kind of stuck with that. And when I came to the city 7 years ago, there were more options for streetlights, and both providers have shrunk that, 5+ years ago. So, barring, it's gonna be a lot, in my opinion, it's gonna be a longer effort to change from that system based on what we've seen in the last 5 years. Doesn't mean we can't start advocating. Doesn't mean we can't go to other neighboring cities and try to leverage that are in like the district, but I think it's a long play and I don't want to set expectations.
I understand.
can I,
With City Center Drive, we talked about, because the city selected a certain model for its portion of the road, we could drive anybody else in that same district to have to use the same thing at their own cost. Is there a similar mechanism available to us for other parts of the city beyond the downtown?
I think we'd have to adopt some like design guidelines that require something like that. I don't think have to evaluate that option, but it's the design guidelines. It's the type of streetscape that we're requiring that allows us to do that. So we can do that at least on the initial. We would still be, once we accept the street, then the replacement for that would fall on us, but anything to build it out would be able to be eligible in the development package and those costs until we fully accept the street. So it's like, it's a split difference there, but we would still ultimately take on that ultimate replacement responsibility. Like you do a normal street that gets done.
Can I add something? Like if you ever look at Jeremy's solar as an option, I also would like to consider fiberglass poles. Cities are moving to fiberglass and away from steel. They never have to be painted, or maintenance is way lower. But so if we ever revamp the system, we should be open to new materials. So long as we're looking at the actual light structure, we should be open to looking at other things.
Zero maintenance.
Yeah. Because
Good point.
those rusty poles start to look,
You just slap more paint on it.
yeah.
One thing I'd like to add is if we're ever looking at broader changes to the lighting system itself, is I talked to you a little bit about this, Kevin, about the dark skies, and Natalie as well. And I still need to do more research into exactly what that association or that group policies are. Oh, do you have some?
Yeah, I was expecting you to think.
Sweet.
So, yeah, so I think it would also, that is a different part of our code.
Mhm.
So that'd be our performance standards. Right now, we require a 90-degree cutoff, so we're about right here. I believe a lot of the streetlights are probably in between here, so not quite this. And then arguably that isn't best practice anymore for dark skies. Best practice would involve like timers and motion sensors.
That would be ideal.
But again, we're talking about investing in lights that are not currently offered by the utility companies. So I think it's a larger discussion, and it would also be a discussion that we would need public safety on board with as well. So.
Yeah, definitely a future discussion. Just wanted to point it out. I've had a number of residents reach out and talk about those type of issues, and some specifically brought dark skies to my attention, and that started looking into it a little bit. So just wanted to raise that now for potential future.
Yeah. If you city slickers ever want to come and see the stars, you can come to me
Come
in
on
Dean's
out.
house.
I'll turn my yard lights off.
Sounds good.
You can enjoy the northern lights, everything.
Mark, you probably have a
Coyotes,
little bit of
screaming, all
half
kinds of stuff going on.
How to bring that to the Eastern Mile.
Yeah. There you go. Change your lighting policy.
All right.
So we don't need to do anything on this.
So the direction. would be
Direction
what?
is to keep it as is, and speak to the city attorney and Jay or whoever to see if there's a way to tie in the dust control policy with this. And if we were to change one, we'd have to change the other.
Okay. Good feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work, guys.
All right. Do we have staff reports? Anything specific? Okay, and then added mayor council reports. I don't have anything too pressing right now. I can't remember who.
I have something.
John did.
Yes, yes.
For it, all you.
So on the Met Council Land Use Advisory Committee, they need an elected official from our area to be on it. I've served for 6 years now, and we can make impactful differences. It's the only voice of the Met Council where they have elected officials. And they hear us, but like just barely. But we need a voice, and I am not running this fall, and I will be done January 4th. And so for one of you four or whoever ends up winning, we need someone to take my spot.
Sounds good. Thanks for letting us know. Do you know how often they?
Yeah, once a quarter.
Once a quarter.
Yeah. We have done some, like for example, the
Days.
policy,
Specific date.
Yeah, it's like the third Thursday of every third month. It's a
Okay.
very specific day.
Gotcha.
I don't know what.
And you're through January? Or through December, I guess, with attending?
Yeah, and I don't know,
Okay,
yeah, if someone wanted to be on it now, they could just,
I'd be open to it.
yeah,
I have to look at my calendar on the
you gotta
dates, but
I can't believe I got the job, you gotta interview for it.
I
and-
can't believe you got.
I know.
As customer friendly you are with Hennepin County.
Oh, yeah,
it-
no, well,
it's-
that's just,
you're right
that's the
there,
Met
man.
Council, yeah. So you gotta say, there's a process to it. If I can get it, anyone here can get it. But like, we have done some work on density. We've done some work on expectations, because it's like an echo chamber in there, and they hear like Minneapolis and St. Paul loud and clear, but they don't hear from anyone outside that in very interior beltway. And sometimes you say things and they're like, oh, we never thought of that. Yeah, I know.
That's the problem.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. So we need people from out here to have a voice at a governing unit that is unelected, has a huge budget, and pushes around smaller governments like crazy.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you doing that for so long, and appreciate you bringing it up, and maybe Alicia, if you can make a note for Jay.
Yeah, they asked
we
me
can
to
discuss it for
find a person.
him, and I can discuss it in the next meeting or next time I'm in, and we can bring it back to a future meeting. Perfect. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, and with that,
I have something too.
oh,
So
Jeremy.
last time I had jawed at Kevin about following up on the cleanup and closing out those 4 phases in Ravinia, specifically around the trails, and getting those wrapped up. And I think we were hoping to get updates from the developer on their progress. Do they have anything that they've shared with us?
I don't have any update relative, for those that don't know, Rowdy was out the last 10 days and for a family trip, so I will on Monday connect with them.
He's gonna have one of those big, like when you get back from a big fun vacation, and then it's like, oh my God, there's so much to catch up on. Rowdy's gonna have a after vacation crash coming.
I've seen correspondences of them trying to get work done, but I don't have a specific schedule on the trails, so I know that's important.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Happy to be a thorn on whoever's side.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I will second that motion. Nicholas.
Bottom Nichols, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.